Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Real United States video blog. I'm your host Paul Campbell. Behind the camera as always is my camera operator and wife, Beverly Campbell. Back in episode 50, last spring, we talked to you briefly about heating with coal. And we showed you us getting the coal loaded in the truck to bring home, but we never actually showed you the stove. Now there's a variety of stoves used throughout the world, and especially here in the United States, for heating with coal and or wood. A lot of people have used pellet stoves that use a pelletized ground up wood these days. Very, very popular item, and the pellets that they use actually look something like feed pellets that you use for feeding livestock. The wood is ground up and it's put into a pelletizing mill and pressed out into these little pellets and then fed with an auger into the stove, and that's where the fire is. A very small fire pot actually, so it keeps a nice even heat. We have opted instead for a more classic old-fashioned, if you will, old-timey kind of cast iron stove. We have quite an affinity for cast iron, as you may have picked up over the time that we've been on the air. And this is our most recent stove. It's a Vogelzang stove, that's the manufacturer, and the particular model is called a Rancher. We picked this particular stove because it burns both coal and wood. And in fact, we'll eat just about anything we shove into it that's combustible. And we also bought this because it is a large flat surfaced top on the stove, and we like to cook on the stove as well as heat with it. It kind of helps keep not only the heating bill down but the electric bill down for cooking, and it's just kind of fun to do, to be able to put something on there. It works sort of like a big slow cooker sometimes, but although you can fry on this, it generates quite a lot of heat. It's actually quite warm. It's going right now. Anyway, we had talked to you about last year about getting coal, and this stove does burn coal quite nicely. I got a few negative comments about coal being a rather dirty fuel, and that is true. It is a relatively dirty fuel. We don't use a great deal of it, but it is nice, and pound for pound it probably is cheap as or cheaper than burning wood. And of course, if you cut your own wood, there's something to be said for that. If you have access to a woods or a place to cut your own wood, that's very nice. We do cut some of our own wood. Relatively small wood because it's a relatively small stove, but we do burn regular stick wood. We cut this during the summer, let it dry, so we have a supply of that. Another thing we use is pellets. We will cut those up, regular manufactured wood that's been cut and planed and built into pellets. The pellets can then be cut up and used as a heat source. It's a nice way so that those aren't wasted. The majority of what we use, at least this winter, in addition to the little bit of coal we had left, was we use a wood block manufactured by Green Manufacturing. Now these are essentially also a wood pellet, just on a much, much larger scale. It's a wood that's been ground up into a very fine sawdust-like material and then pressed in a large press. I'm not exactly certain what the machine looks like. I have been in contact with Green Manufacturing about the possibility of us getting down there to do one of our Small Business America episodes with them to show how these are actually manufactured. But these are nice because the wood has been dried very, very thoroughly. These are very low moisture content, and then pressed together. They burn very hot, very clean, and the combustion is complete. They're very low ash. This is a really nice product. Pound for pound, or BTU for BTU, in terms of heat production, these are probably also, again, a better bang for the buck than what you get with regular cut stick wood. And that's one of the things we like about them. They're very clean. They don't get a lot of creosote or soot in the chimney. They are relatively inexpensive, probably less inexpensive than stick wood, and they throw a lot of heat. And they fit nicely in our stove, which I'm going to try and show you now, even though I know I'm getting out of the frame. This stove doesn't have a door in the front. This stove is specifically designed to be fed through the top. So these blocks, I just dropped that in there, and they work very nicely in terms of what will fit in this stove. This is not a real large stove, so you have to be kind of careful about the lengths that you cut your wood in when you do cut wood. That's another nice thing about using coal in it. The coal on average is relatively small. You can't put a lot of it in there. You don't want to cook yourself out of the house, and you don't want to smother the fire. But we buy these blocks that are made by Green Manufacturing from a local distributor here in the town that we live in. And I'll try and show you one of these. They actually come packaged in bricks of 20 that weigh about 38 pounds. And so they're very, very convenient for stacking, very easy to store, relatively clean product because, you know, I mean, you get a little bit of sawdust off them when you open them up, but there's not a lot of stuff that falls off of them. So they're a very nice product. About 17,000 BTUs production of heat per block. We really like these, and if you buy them when they're on sale, you can get them for about 20% off. So we'll buy like a pallet load at a time, which is 50 blocks, so just under a ton of wood at a time, and that'll last us, pretty close to 2 months. Yes, we do have automatic gas heat in the house as well, so that when the fire goes out, that we don't freeze to death in the middle of the night, but largely this is much cheaper than using natural gas. That's why we maintain a stove, because it really does help keep our heating bills down in a reasonable range. You'll also notice that I have this little copper pan sitting here on top of the stove. That's our humidifier. Rather than going out and buying some kind of electric contraption that's expensive and has to be maintained, yeah, we just have a copper pan that we keep full of water, because this is obviously a very dry heat. So once or twice a day we fill it up with water and set it back on the stove, and it helps keep the moisture content in the air high enough so that we don't end up with cracked lips and cracked hands and whatnot from the dryness of the air. So there's a look at our wood stove, old-timey cast iron heating unit that we use, and that's pretty much it. It's a relatively simple device. It has a damper in the chimney and a draft at the bottom that you can adjust the amount of air intake it has, and that's pretty much it. So it takes a little bit to get the cast iron warmed up in the morning, but once it does, it holds the heat and dissipates it back out in the evening, holds the heat for a long period of time so that the house stays warm longer in the evening. So we'd like to thank you for joining us here on the Real United States Video Blog. If you have questions or comments, we encourage you to please leave them in the comments section below. We love hearing from all of you. I try to get back to everybody as soon as I possibly can. If you haven't already, please pick subscribe and join us for future episodes. We'd be glad to have you with us. We ask that you please, if you like this, pick like, and by all means, share this with your friends. That's how we're really going to grow this channel. And as always, thank you for watching.